DevOps SRE, I would say. And then in April this year, InfraCloud also got acquired by a US-based consulting firm called Improving. So they are primarily based out of US, Argentina, Canada, Mexico, Chile, etc. They did not have an India presence. InfraCloud is their first India acquisition, basically. So globally, including the improving strength, we are about 2,200 people strong now. Okay. So yeah, that's a little bit about InfraCloud. Any questions before we move forward?
No, Gaurav. No questions.
Okay.
Thanks for the introduction.
All right. Cool. So maybe you can give me a brief overview of what you've been doing and we can take it forward from there.
Thanks, Gaurav. Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Vishal, and I'm born and raised in Kanpur. So it's been 4.5 years since I've been working. So from the beginning only, I have started working from DevOps and cloud, managing the cloud resources deployed on AWS, Azure, or GCP. Then working with application side for the Docker and Kubernetes, means packing the application into the Docker file and deploying it to the container orchestration, which is Kubernetes. Then we manage the life cycle of the containers, managing the life cycles of the applications which we have, building the CI/CD pipelines from Jenkins, making the best secure way to deploy our application. Not only just deploy, but making sure our applications deployed securely in the infrastructure. And my main focus in my projects is to make sure the high availability of other application, to make sure like even if the traffic spikes, our application scales smartly. Also also work with Terraform for provisioning the infrastructure, like writing up the TF files in a modular approach to provision our infrastructure, and making sure there is no conflicts happening in the teams or with the applications as well. So like these are the areas on which I have worked. And in my current role, I'm working as a consultant. So it's like I have been assigned to a project from the scratch, and once the project is delivered from end to end, I have been assigned to a new project. So I have been working as a team member and an individual contributor as well.
What is this project about?
So
This current role is what you started in November last year?
yes,
When did it start?
yeah.
November. Okay. So what is this project about? What do you have to do here?
My most recent project was for like it was a software product basically for the travel and tourism website and the mobile app as well. So we were responsible for building the pipelines like from the scratch for the microservices, till then the developers were building the code on optimizing the application. We were involved in planning of the resources that are required in the cloud to deploy the application more effectively, and making planning specifically first the resources what are generally required, then making the architecture of it, make discussing the tools which we can use, particularly which can enhance the productivity of the application. And once we were up with the code, so we were using Jenkins, so we built the CI/CD pipeline for each of the microservices involvement wise, the dev stage and prod. Then we deployed it into the three of the environments to make like dev is basically for the developers to test their applications, and we keep the replica for the stage and prod to make it more identical, as we generally shift from stage to prod in our final release. And yeah, up to this mark, it was up for me where I have a particular work. Then I have implemented the monitoring part as well, particularly with Prometheus and Grafana, uh, all alongside with the cloud managed monitoring tools as well.
Okay. So what is the setup like basically? How many clusters, nodes, how many different environments do you have?
Okay, so from the very beginning level, from the high level, we are having dev, stage, and prod. So dev is like just not just a minimal cluster, but yes, but a less configured cluster which we have to just spin up the microservices to work on them, to make sure they are working fine as expected or not. And then we are having the stage and the prod cluster. So there are all three separate. Lastly, I was working with Azure, so there were three different AKS which we were working on. And like they were like a sort of securely, we need to like have a separate connection to that particular Kubernetes cluster. And then we divided our workload into namespaces wise, and for the logical separation for any of the debugging or any of the checking the microservices or the deployments which are up and running, or if they are causing any of the errors, so we have divided it into a logical separation for the namespace. And there were few applications as well, the micro applications from the main applications, which we were bound to have, like only a few of the nodes should be having those pods running. So we have distributed the workload in such a way that the pods should be assigned to a designated nodes only, not to any of the random nodes. So this was the architecture of the Kubernetes cluster.
Okay. Two questions. One is how did you assign those designated nodes? What did you have to do for that?
Okay, so we used the concept of taint and toleration particularly to assign that particular deployment for that node, if we are having. So that particular node will be tolerating the deployment, which will be having the key particularly for that taint, so that deployment will be deployed on that particular node.
Okay. How do you taint the node?
Okay, particularly for node, right?
Yeah.
So like while the deployment, like if the deployment is going normally with the YAML file, I'll be like in the YAML only for the deployment, I'll be having one key value for the for the
Tolerations.
for the tolerations. But before that, I'll be using the kubectl command line to taint the node and giving the name of the node. We'll be having nodes, you will can use the kubectl get nodes, and we can get the nodes, and we need to check, or if it is going in a dashboard, we can check particular which node is deployed in which region, and that particular node I can taint using the kubectl taint node command. And then we have the values for the deployments, like if I'm going to deploy any of the deployment, so I'll be having the key.
But then if you use the kubectl command, the infrastructure diverges from Terraform or whatever IAC you might be using, right? Or you are not using IAC here?
Okay, so we were using particularly IAC for infrastructure provisioning. Any of the things for the application side, we have created the pipeline using the CI/CD for Jenkins. So it is having a
Tainting a node is actually an infrastructure, no?
yes.
So is that not part of your Terraform
Yep,
script?
we definitely can do that with Terraform as well, because in the Terraform we can provide it particularly for tainting the nodes, but more into the application side when our infrastructure is up and ready. Now we are into the deployment part, so it is by we can definitely can do, but the where we were doing is more on the Jenkins part, where Jenkins is not only we were using to deploy our workloads, but also managing the services. So it can have a track, or we can
So help me understand how you handled failures basically. What happens if the node goes away or node crashes, node becomes unhealthy? You will essentially scale up new node. Was that a manual process or automated?
Okay, so when the initially we are having while creating the cluster, we were having the cluster autoscaler. So
No, I'm talking about specifically the tented nodes. So I'm assuming now the picture I'm getting is you have some nodes. You add nodes to the cluster. That's fine. Then you during your pipeline somehow with the kubectl command taints specific nodes, so that the deployment that you do afterwards with the right tolerations will go run on those nodes, basically, right? Now, what happens if one of the tented nodes is just becomes unhealthy? Will a new node come up automatically, or will it be manual process for you? There is no pipeline involved here because it's not deployment. It's like during operations. How is that scenario supposed to be handled?
okay, so we do keep these things in mind if the node gets unhealthy. So we'll be having okay, so like if this is a scenario like these things include in the planning part as well. So suppose if in case the node goes down, we'll be having one new node that should be coming up. If in the case there, we will be having the health checks particularly for either the nodes as well. So if the nodes are not ready, if it is showing any of the error, it will automatically be spinning up the new node, or particularly for the workloads which are already running on that node, we firstly will be having the PDBs, so that those particular pods should be up. There should be no downtime. And if in case this happens, like even this scenarios even happens like when we drain the node while upgrading cluster or another node fails, that workload shifts to a new node which is newly created, and that new deployments will be scheduled to that tainted node.
But the tenting process itself is manual, right? That's not the new node that comes up automatically won't have the tent.
So in order to make sure that particular the new node comes up, I'll be making sure if there is untainted node crashes and one new node comes up, there is no issues or lag in this. But if there is
Absolutely.
tainted node, I'll be making sure once we are the new node is getting tainted, I'll be setting up a cube job or AWS Lambda with a in your event bridge where I can particularly configure that new node that should be tainted before deploying the workload.
Okay. Is this something that you have running like this, or is this something that you're thinking can be done? I mean, what are you doing today? Is it more of a manual process right now that if a node comes up, okay, someone needs to go and tend it, or do you have automations with like whatever cube job or lambda function, etc., already in place?
Okay, so initially when I was in the project, so there was no automated task, so we just
Nothing.
need to spin up a new node and then using the again
So it's
the
a manual process
but
basically.
later on we shifted from the cron job, particularly for the Kubernetes job, to taint a specific node for the new node, and so that like just automating the things. If we were having any of the manual things, like this is the manual thing, so we
Okay.
automated it.
Okay. Fair enough. Did you consider a scenario where you could have basically simply created a separate node groups for all the nodes which need to be tented and then just make the tent the default behavior when a node comes up?
Yep, this was introduced like within our team only, but there was an architectural scenario where we were deploying our application in such a way that our front end workload and our back end workload were already being bifurcated into two node pools. So the front end workload was only deployed on the front end nodes, and so if in case we need to have a different tainted node, particularly in this scenario, we need to have manage another node pool as well. So this was meant to bring some conflict. So we shifted to a cron job,
Okay.
not to the other node pool.
Okay. Fair enough. Second question is you mentioned that you are basically logical separation is achieved through namespacing the applications, basically, right? Is there any restrictions between the namespaces, or do the applications share the common worker nodes even if running on different namespaces?
Uh, no, like there were no as such different segregations among the namespace because we were having the different environments for the dev, prod, and
So any service was able to access any service running in different namespace, basically. That was perfectly all open as such.
yes, yes. And that too, like if there is any of the requirement, like there was a few of the services that do not need, that only needs to communicate to only two or three other microservices, then we have the implemented the Kubernetes network policy to make sure there is the isolation happens particularly among those three or four microservices. So there should be no like any sort of memory leaks or throttling for those piled up microservices.
Okay, fair enough. Can you walk me through your infrastructure as a code setup, basically?
Okay, so initially when I was in the project, we haven't implemented Terraform from the scratch. So it was like we shift deployed our cloud resources to Azure, and then later once our application like we have deployed all the cloud resources, CI/CD pipelines, then we have shifted to Terraform. So what exactly we did? We followed a modular approach. Initially we have whatever is deployed in the infrastructure of the cloud, we have first noted down list of that we have with the configurations. So we have written a modular Terraform code for each of the cloud, but not in a hard coded way. Suppose we have virtual machines, so we do not be configuring the size of the virtual machine, the name of the virtual machine, we have keeping it as a parameter. So we'll be having dev, stage, and prod. Then we have the each module like VPC, subnet, EKS. Then we have the load balancers, the blob storage. So then we have created the required resources. We have imported the existing cloud resources to the Terraform to manage those deployed state, and we were storing the backend remotely in the Azure we have the blob storage particularly, and enable the versioning to make sure like the state file which we are having is secure, and if in case that state file gets corrupted, we will be having the last stable build configuration to get it through. But still like this haven't happened as of now. So this is the thing. And then yes, we were having the like we have the db strings, we have the api tokens, and we were having the username passwords for the database. So that were we were using Azure Key Vault. We have integrated that so that no any of the plain text secrets should be uh, visible to any of the users. And that too we were working in a state locking mechanism, so only one engineer can work, else like the state file is locked. So this is how like we performed, and like we were having the different state files for each of the environment.
Okay, fair enough. The import that you did, it was more like Terraform import or something else that you used?
Yep, same the Terraform import, because that our resource was already deployed to the cluster. But okay, so beyond that, once we have already imported the deployed resources, now we came to a requirement. We have to implement a DR now. So for the DR, like we again written from the scratch the same things, the resources, just the twerks in the the DNS and then the routing mechanism. But yep, the same scenario we copied for as DC.
Okay. Fair enough. So, your experience so far has been primarily on Azure, or can I say it's AWS? Which one would be your primary cloud provider?
So, like I have worked with many of the projects. Sometimes the client is working on Azure, so I have worked on Azure. So if the client is asking their application have to be deployed in their own infrastructure, so I have worked on AWS as well. So it is a mix of Azure and AWS. But yep, I have worked with the GCP as well for a very short time, and with the on-prem as well. So it's sort of mix of the all the things. Just a minute.
But if you were to choose one cloud provider as your favorite, which one would it be?
Okay, so like again like it's like more of sort of hypothetical, because in AWS, if we are having our Kubernetes workload, we cannot see in the dashboard but when later on I have
Azure
worked
allows it.
yeah, so it sort of automatically shows in the UI as well whatever the workloads required, what are the enhancements we can do. But yep, I have started from the AWS, so it's more sort of friendly for me.
Okay, fair enough. What kind of role are you looking for, Vishal?
Okay, so what kind of role? Like, okay, so being till now, like I have been working as a team member from a very beginner level to a very advanced level as of now. So more looking into a leadership roles, like owning up the things, taking the ownership of the of the any of the outcomes or any of the outages. It should not be like I'll be sitting idle just to make sure if anyone comes, I'll be approaching to any of the leads to start working. As I have been to a client facing role as well, I was the like key member to report to the clients, making up the bridges between the third party developers and our own team developers, all the stakeholders, like we have the DB teams as well. So it's more like or to a leadership role where I could bring my own ideas as well while implementing and managing the current infrastructure as well.
Okay. Cool. I think I got what I needed to know right now, Vishal. If you have any question for me, I'll be happy to answer.
Thanks, Gaurav. Thanks for interviewing me. And just like, what exactly? How do we work here, particularly? Like, what's the work culture? If like, I'm having a positive feedback, and then exactly what how I did like here, particularly for the scenarios you asked me.
Okay. In terms of culture, I think we are more driven by the open source culture, I would say, because we have been very active in the open source world, in the community in general. So internally, we are very much async driven, lot of writing, I would say, lot of openness in the culture in general, no real hierarchy per se, and it's more or less a flat organization that we are working like. So I think from culture perspective, that's what we are. We are very intense in terms of learning. There are a lot of learning opportunities, and basically the way I can see is it say it is uh, you having or not having a particular experience matters less than your willingness and your capability to learn and demonstrate effectiveness. Basically, if you can learn new things quickly, if you are able to absorb the context and figure out way to get things done, you'll basically move much further within infra-cloud than just the number of years of experience or the exact toolings that you've worked on in the past, basically. Right? So that's essentially generally how we operate. Um, Now, coming to how you did here, I think you were able to explain the project that you've been working on fairly well. I'm not really sure if the tent and toleration wala scenario that we discussed, if you were able to basically clarify everything that I needed to know there, probably you should look back at that and figure out what got missed mostly. Scenario is believable, definitely,